Every year, NASCAR fans anticipate the first rumblings of what we call silly season. Silly season ignites curiosity, imagination, and fascination as to what might logically transpire, or perhaps something totally out of left field. More often than not, it's the latter, and in this video, we will look back at NASCAR history into some of the most ridiculous rumors that didn't come to fruition. My only rules for this is it has to have absolutely no chance of ever happening to make the list. Some of the honorable mentions may have been included in the top 10 had they had no chance of a resurgence. These include Fernando Alonso to NASCAR, Kyle Larson to SHR, Kyle Busch Motorsports to Cup, and the Money Team. So let's start off with the first one. Fernando Alonso did a car swap with Jimmy Johnson back in early 2019, where he drove the 2018 Loves Chevrolet, and Jimmy drove the 2017 McLaren. He also attended a press conference a few months back, and rumors began to swirl being only fueled by the said test. He would later state that he isn't interested in a full-time switch, but is open to running a race here and there. While in 2019 he was more occupied with other open-wheel racing iterations and endurance car racing, 2020 left the door wide open. Unfortunately, we all know what happened, and the very next year he would drive for Alpine, signing a contract through 2022. There is still a possibility that after Formula One, in the very near distant future, we could see Alonso's name on the ticker. Now, Larson to SHR has been one of the most heavily discussed rumors in recent memory because of the fact that it just makes sense. You've got two dirt guys, you've got Tony Stewart openly stating that he wants Larson to drive for SHR, adamant that he wants Larson. So, what went wrong? Well, in short, the Ford executives had the upper hand and denied Larson a chance to drive for the team. Now, it could still happen, especially if the Dodge rumors come true, but seeing how Larson is pretty successful at Hendrick Motorsports, it's pretty unlikely. Kyle Busch Motorsports to Cup has been talked about because, well, Kyle Busch races in Cup. Driver owners are making a bit of a comeback as of late, so when M&M's announced their departure from NASCAR after 2022, a lot of people have been talking about KBM to Cup, with Nemechek, John Hunter Nemechek that is, potentially driving. And then we have Floyd Mayweather's yearly teasing of the Money Team to NASCAR, or actually a few random yahoos using Floyd Mayweather's name. The whole thing is a bit of a mess and would require a video in and of itself, but basically this was supposed to be a new team that nearly made its NASCAR debut. It was put on the entry list for the 2019 Ford EcoBoost 400, but the hauler never showed up. Jeffrey Earnhardt was rumored to be the driver, the number was said to be 50, but no one ever talked about the sponsors that were to pay the bills. The team didn't race at all in 2020 or 2021, and it seems more unlikely the more we seep into the 2020s. Now, in no particular order, here is the top 10. Number 1, Dale Earnhardt Jr. to Joe Gibbs Racing. Now, the first bit of the story is a bit shocking in and of itself, because it would, at this time, mean Dale Jr. leaving his father's team. That would be the near equivalent of Tony Stewart leaving SHR after, say, 2012. It was shocking to say the least, and shook the NASCAR world, who realized that the vision Dale Earnhardt had for a powerhouse team would be annihilated in short time. But for those behind the curtains, it was all but inevitable. Once the announcement sank into the hearts and minds of NASCAR abroad, rumors began to circulate about Dale Earnhardt Jr.'s next destination. Some threw RCR into the ring, which would be shocking, but not as shocking, because Dale Earnhardt did drive for RCR for over a decade. And it was not as shocking as, say, Dale Jr. to Joe Gibbs Racing. Now, some of the newer NASCAR fans might be thinking, Dale Jr. in a Toyota? But that would actually not be the case. I think Dale Jr. would drive a Chevy, meaning JGR would never switch to Toyota in 2008 and beyond, but that's all hypothetical. Now, in terms of why it did not happen,
I have met with two people. I met with Joe and I met with Rick. And I happened to meet with Joe first. And as far as I can remember, you said, why don't you come out to Washington? We'll meet at Dan's house.
Yep.
And I'm thinking, that's awesome. I don't think I'd ever met Dan before. And so we go out there, and I remember when we got there, we went to the back. We went in his backyard, and we're sitting around this table, and they had these tomatoes, stuffed tomatoes with pimento cheese in them, and they were amazing. And I couldn't stop eating them. And I couldn't pay attention to what Joe and them were saying because I was wanting to eat more tomatoes.
I'm trying to give him millions of dollars, and he's eating tomatoes.
Yeah. I ended up, instead of walking away for the contract, I walked away with a recipe for the stuffed tomatoes.
See, you again, that's my point, is that you spend all this time preparing your recruit.
That's right.
And your recruiting pitch, and then it's things like tomatoes that he walks away with.
Pimento cheese ruined the deal.
I agree.
Well, I want to let Joe tell his side of it, but we ended up So we're talking for a while. He gave us a sheet of paper with terms on it. I'd never been in any kind of negotiations before. I'd never negotiated with Dad and Teresa. They just said, here, this is what you're getting paid, and that's the way it is. And so me and Kelly are in Washington. We get this term sheet. We go into this private room. Joe and them said, go take a minute and talk about it. We go in there, and I went in there, and I said to Kelly, I said, what's on that paper? What's the number? And she told me, and I said, we got to get out of here. I was like, this is way bigger than I ever even imagined. Like it made my head explode. Yeah. And I said, I can't decide this today. We got to go home and talk about this. And my reaction was to run in the other direction. It's crazy, I know, but
it's crazy.
Well, it was all so big. You got to remember, like when I was racing at DEI, everything was so small.
Yeah.
And that's just that was fine. That was the way it was. I didn't know any better. But all of a sudden, it was just way too much coming at me. I'm with Joe Gibbs, my hero. We're at the owner of the Redskins house. They're wanting to pay me a lot of money, and I just needed to step back and get a bigger view of it. So we walk out of the room. And Kelly's like, that's yeah, of course, we're going to calm down. We're going to go home. We're going to talk about this. We still got to go meet with Rick. I said, yeah, we got to do that. We got to do that. We just got to get home, talk about this. This is crazy. I can't believe this. So I try to pull it all together, and because we're going to go back in there and say, Joe, hey, we're going to thank you. This has been amazing. We're going to go home. This is awesome. We're going to talk about this. And so Dan looks at me and goes, what? You ain't signing it? Because I think Dan's so used to, like, players walk in the room, here's the contract, they sign it, and they leave. I was like, no, Mr. Snyder, we're going to go home and have a conversation and sort this out and go through this. We've got a lot to talk about. And he is in the business, and correct me if I'm wrong, Joe, but he's in the business of taking other smaller failing businesses or older businesses and revitalizing them. And he was in the middle of doing this with some restaurant chain and started offering me percentages of this company. And he's like, yep, it's not worth a lot now, but down the road, it's going to be worth X amount of dollars.
Johnny Rockets.
Right.
Oh, yeah.
I thought it was Johnny Rockets. And he's like trying to tag that on to the agreement. And I'm like, man, that's awesome. I appreciate it. And I'm like, God, I'm spinning my tires backwards as fast as I can to get out of that building. And it just was so overwhelming.
Next up at number 2 is a Bobby Labonte rumor. The 2000 Series champion started off the 21st century with stellar success, but unfortunately it was short-lived. From 2001 to 2005, Labonte fell off the face of dominance and prominence, 2005 especially being his worst year. But he wasn't done yet, and he joined Penny Enterprises for 2006 to 2008. He actually had some very big moments during this time and was rebuilding an organization that many thought had no room for improvement. And this is sort of what we know him as today. A driver that never really retired, but always helped the little guys get solid finishes. However, he was about to get a second chance at vying for the title. At the end of 2008, rumors swirled that Labonte would drive in a 4th RCR car in 2009. Now, even if that did happen, the season would be dismal for the organization as a whole, so it's unlikely we would see him win, but it makes one wonder, what if? Ward Burton to Joe Gibbs Racing. So for this next one, I'll read something I found on Reddit, and believe me, it's Reddit, so take the veracity of this with a grain of salt. For context, this was on Serious Speedway Legends. In 1993, Burton finished 6th in points with wins at Rougemont, Martinsville, and the season ender at Atlanta, but blew a few motors along the way, handicapping his championship hopes. A few owners took notice, and Burton decided to stay loyal to his owner, Alan Dillard, who was based out of Charlottesville, Virginia. Dillard was his Busch Series owner at the time. He turned down a few rides, including the Kenny Bernstein King Racing car that ran the 26, and notably the Interstate Battery Chevy for Joe Gibbs Racing. After a dismal year with Dillard and Cup, he decided to stay loyal towards his team and turned down the 18 car for 1995. That ride eventually went to Bobby Labonte, who of course won 23 races and the 2000 championship in his 11 years with the team. The main reason why Burton turned it down was because he knew once he was gone, the team would shudder without him leaving, men out of work, and Burton, being selfish as he is, stayed put for 1995 and beyond. Well, eventually his contract was for 2 years, ending after 1995, and Hardee's was not coming back for 1996, instead choosing to be an associate sponsor with Mark Martin on his Valvoline Ford. After a 6th place finish at the August Michigan race, Burton was fired, mostly because Dillard wanted him to find a ride for 1996. Eventually, Bill Davis took notice of him after the revolving door of drivers for the 22 and joined them, eventually winning his first race at Rockingham in November. This next one is Kevin Harvick to Team Penske after Rusty Wallace retired. Now, Team Penske had been in the rumor mill for a plethora of different reasons at this time, but most notably, it was to fill the gap for Rusty Wallace. Wallace would retire at the end of a great 2005 season, and Kurt Busch, as we all know, would replace him from 2006 to 2011. But to think that Kevin Harvick was inches away from the number 2 Dodge is honestly shocking. Oh wait, the number 2 Toyota, because Team Penske was also rumored to switch to Toyota in 2007. However, Kevin Harvick would sign a contract around this time to re-up with Richard Childress Racing through 2009, and the rest is pretty much history. So, this next one is Ryan Blaney to Furniture Row Racing in 2014 at number 5. Now, SpeedwayDigest.com, Wendy Venturini, reported that Jeff Burton was the top option for Furniture Row Racing in 2014, but other drivers such as Ryan Truex, Ryan Blaney, and Michael McDowell, as well as David Reagan, were also thrown into the windmill. Now, Ryan Blaney to Furniture Row Racing would be shocking in and of itself, and the main reason why it didn't come to fruition is because Napa would leave the 56 because of Spingate in 2013, and Martin Truex Jr. was left without a ride, so Furniture Row Racing gave him a ride for 2014. If Spingate was not orchestrated and Martin Truex Jr. stayed in the 56 for 2014, it's very, very likely that Ryan Blaney could potentially have driven for Furniture Row Racing in 2014. Now, he was 19 years old at the time, so he would have been massively underage. He would have been only 1 year older than Joey Logano was in the 20 car in 2009. So, to say the least, he would be very inexperienced. He didn't even run a full-time Xfinity Series schedule. He ran a full-time Truck Series schedule for Brad Keselowski Racing, but that's about it. Now, there were also conflicting rumors that stated that he was happy at the Team Penske development program, and it turns out that that was the case because he would drive for Wood Brothers Racing in 2015 and 16 and 17 before driving for Team Penske in 2018. But to think of Ryan Blaney potentially as a champion in 2017 in the 78 is pretty shocking to say the least. So without further ado, these are 5 of NASCAR's most ridiculous rumors that have happened in the past. I probably could have included more, and maybe if this video does really well, I might make a part 2 of it, because there are a lot of rumors that have happened throughout NASCAR history. So, like, subscribe, and comment below what you thought of this video, and maybe some rumors of your own that might be included in the next video. Till next time, this has been the news. I'll see you.